Stephen Miller is, without competition, the most evil little roach in American politics. And I do not say that lightly, because when you trace it back, when you find the actual origin point of his career, it leads someplace disturbingly repulsive.
I will say and I will do things that no one else in their right mind would say or do.
It leads back to Duke University, 2006, when a black woman walked into the hospital in the early hours of March 14th and told a nurse that she had been grouped by 3 white lacrosse players at an off-campus party the night before. The nurse examined her and concluded that she had been assaulted. Within days, the story was everywhere. National media, campus protests, the coach was fired, the season was canceled. 3 students were indicted on charges of first-degree and kidnapping. The entire country was watching, and a 20-year-old college junior from Santa Monica named Stephen Little Bitch Miller saw his opening.
I think I speak for many students when I say that we're very, very concerned that 2 innocent people may have possibly just had their lives ruined.
Lord, your first concern is that somebody's falsely accused?
Don't tell me what my first concern is.
I'm Lauren Paritra. If you're new here, this story is so insane it sounds fake, but it isn't. And I'm taking you with me on this journey of understanding exactly how Stephen Little Bitch Miller used one woman's tragedy, one woman's rape, as a personal launch pad for his career. He built a national profile on the backs of one of the most racially charged campus scandals in American history. And I'm building a podcast that's fully bootstrapped and as a response to Katie Miller's. So consider every sub, every hype, every like, every comment, 6 words or more, as an act of service, as an act of justice, and an FU to Katie and Stephen Little Bitch Miller.
And the idea that in America you would pursue a case against 3 people when the evidence suggests not that they did it, but that they didn't do it, to me is beyond unconscionable.
This is one of those stories where every detail makes it worse, because he walked away with connections to a white nationalist who would later advocate for ethnic cleansing, all before he was old enough to rent a car without a surcharge. And it all comes back to that party, the one where everything went so wrong, and then somehow Miller inserted himself into the story when nobody else would touch it. And finally, who he met because of it and why that matters more than anything else, and why we have them to blame for what we have now. The night of March 13th, 2006 started as a party at a rental house just off Duke's East Campus, where 3 of the lacrosse team's senior co-captains lived. It was spring break, the cafeterias were closed, and the coach had handed out around $10,000 in cash to the 46 players for meals and expenses. Most of them ended up at that house drinking through the afternoon and into the evening, and at 11 that night, 2 exotic dancers arrived. Crystal Gail Magnum, who was 27, and Kib Roberts, who was 31. The co-captain who booked them had specifically requested white women. Both Magnum and Roberts were black. When they arrived, the players debated whether to proceed and then decided to go ahead anyway. Things got awful and deteriorated quickly. Magnum was visibly intoxicated and unsteady when she arrived. One of the co-captains later said she couldn't talk or stand up straight. The performance fell apart, tensions rose, and one player grabbed a broomstick and made a threatening, sexual comment towards Roberts. Roberts ended the show, gathered Magnum, and the 2 women tried to leave. As they were pulling away in Roberts' car, players on top of a stone wall surrounding campus screamed racial slurs at them, the N-word. Repeatedly, they used the N-word loud enough for a neighbor to hear. Magnum went to a social services center that night, then to Duke University Hospital, where a nurse concluded that she had been assaulted. She told the police that 3 white lacrosse players had raped her in a bathroom at the party. A grand jury indicted 3 players, David Evans, Reed Siegelman, and Colin Finnerty, on charges of first-degree and kidnapping. The scandal consumed Duke's campus for the next 13 months. The story starts really bad and somehow keeps escalating, because now is the part where Stephen Little Bitch Miller comes in. At a time when he was a 20-year-old junior writing a bi-weekly column for the Duke student newspaper, he had no connections to the lacrosse team, and I assume, as somebody who used to play lacrosse, I can only hypothesize that he wouldn't know a lacrosse stick if somebody checked him in the dome with one. But he understood one thing very clearly, that cable news networks desperately wanted a conservative Duke student willing to defend these players and their atrocious behavior and crimes. And no one on campus was spineless and evil enough to do that. So while everyone else was trying to survive this distressing, tragic moment, one person was trying to milk it. Miller was so willing. He started writing columns defending the players before the indictments even came down. He was framing the entire situation as a left-wing mob attacking innocent students based on an unproven allegation.
This was never about what happened to this particular woman according to her testimony, nor was it ever about these players. It was always for them about their political agenda.
He went on CNN, he went on Fox News, he went on the O'Reilly Factor night after night while his classmates kept their heads down. Miller was on national TV making himself the face of the pro-lacrosse player position on campus, the pro-rapist. When the charges were eventually dropped because Magnum kept changing her story and the DNA evidence didn't match, and we know that this is very common in cases of where it's very difficult to prove in a court of law. Miller declared total victory and wrote that 3 players had been prosecuted purely because they were white and their accuser was black. And we know that the data tells us otherwise about everything about how black women are treated in this country, especially when it comes to courts of law. But Stephen Little Bitch Miller used his final column on the subject to attack what he called moral bankruptcy of politically correct orthodoxy, positioning himself as the lone truth teller who had been right all along while everyone else was in a state of panic. The article's author, who literally wrote the book on the Duke lacrosse scandal, draws a sharp contrast with Miller's conclusion. His own assessment was that if the accused players had been black and their accuser white, there is no way they would have been exonerated without a trial. No way a secret state investigation would have declared them innocent. And no way Duke would have paid them $20 million each in a legal settlement, which is exactly what the 3 white players received. Miller never engaged with any of that. He had what he came for, and the part that explains everything, it was through his visibility on the lacrosse case that Miller met Richard Spencer at the Duke Conservative Union in 2006.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
Are you like the hipster version of the neo-Nazi movement?
It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
Spencer was a few years older. He was a PhD candidate in the history department, and he says he mentored Miller during this period. He described being impressed by Miller's media instincts and his willingness to wade into racial politics when most people want to go near them. Some may say Stephen Little Bitch Miller had a passion for white nationalism from an early age. Spencer has become one of the most prominent white nationalists in America. He founded a white nationalist think tank called National Policy Institute. He became a leading intellectual figure on the alt-right and has publicly advocated for what he calls the creation of a white ethno-state on the North American continent through what he describes as peaceful ethnic cleansing. Peaceful ethnic cleansing. His audiences have responded to him with Nazi salutes. He has refused on multiple occasions to denounce Adolf Hitler. This is who mentored Stephen Little Bitch Miller at Duke. When their relationship became public during the 2016 presidential campaign, Miller sent an email to Mother Jones stating that he had absolutely no relationship with Spencer, that Spencer's claims were 100% false. Spencer found the denial weird. He said that he had protected Miller by staying quiet about their connection for years and that Miller could have simply acknowledged knowing him a decade earlier and moved on. Instead, Miller chose a flat-out denial of something that Spencer says is simply not true. Nearly 3,500 Duke alumni signed an open letter to Miller condemning his views after he joined the Trump White House, writing that they saw nothing in his actions that furthered the values of intellectual honesty, tolerance, diversity, and respect. People look at Stephen Miller's rise and think, how did this guy end up in the West Wing? But if you were at Duke in 2006, you already know exactly how. This lacrosse tragedy, these atrocities committed by these players, he used that as his launch pad. What happened to a black woman at the hands of 3 white athletes? Miller looked at that, and Miller didn't hesitate for a second. He saw a camera, and he ran towards it. He took the position nobody decent was willing to touch, nobody with a soul, and it gave him a national profile at 20 years old. He was drunk off of power. Nick Silverman, who knew him back then, said something that I can't stop thinking about. He said listening to Trump talk, he kept hearing Miller. He heard his voice, not just policies. There's a specific way of wrapping cruelty in the language of common sense, the instinct to find a wound and press on it. Because the thing people don't want to say out loud is Miller didn't learn any of this from Trump or from wacky Steve Bannon or from anyone in Washington. He walked onto that campus already like this, already convinced. He was already calculating who he could step on and what he could get out of it. The scandal didn't build Stephen into the little bitch he is today. It just introduced him to the rest of us. And some of us wish he hadn't ever. And here's the thing. College wasn't where this started. The Duke version of Stephen Little Bitch Miller existed for a long time. His childhood friends saw it coming. Some of them tried to warn people and warn us. And honestly, some of them never quite got over it. Some of them still have the scars of knowing Stephen Little Bitch Miller when they were children. And I'm going to next share some of those stories directly that show signs that probably should have had anyone else institutionalized. This series is informed by a 2017 Vanity Fair investigation piece by journalist William D. Cohen, who spent months tracing Miller's path from his teenage years in Santa Monica all the way to the West Wing. It is one of the most detailed portraits of Stephen Little Bitch Miller ever written. And if you want to read the original piece, I'll link it in the description. But we're going to be diving into all things Stephen Little Bitch Miller dark past villain origin story. So make sure you take a moment to subscribe. We also currently have a lead on Katie Miller, who is the wife of Stephen Little Bitch Miller. She knew all this and married that man on purpose. So the least we can do is subscribe, share, comment out of pure principle.